The glass walls of Reynolds and Stone's Seattle headquarters shimmered under the February drizzle, a sleek monument to ambition and betrayal. Inside, Emily Carter, 41, single mother, sat frozen in a leather chair, her pulse hammering in her ears. The air smelled of stale espresso and Mark Reynolds' overpriced cedarwood cologne, a scent that clung to the room like a bad decision. Across the mahogany desk, her boss smirked, sliding a manila envelope toward her with the casual cruelty of a man who'd already won. "Don't take it personally, Emily," he said, his voice dripping with false sympathy. "It's just business." Emily's fingers twitched, but she kept her hands clasped tightly in her lap. Termination papers. Effective immediately. After 5 years of bleeding for this firm, after crafting the $15 million 0 cents Bennett Enterprises contract, the biggest in company history, she was being discarded like a used tissue. Her mind raced, replaying the late nights, the missed recitals with her daughter Lila, the weekends spent hunched over her laptop while the rest of the world lived. Well, for Mark's smug grin and a severance package that wouldn't cover 6 months of rent in Seattle's skyrocketing market. "Yusiria," she said, her voice low, steady, though her chest felt like it was caving in. Mark leaned back, his tailored suit creasing perfectly. "Restructuring, Emily. We need fresh blood, new energy. You've been solid, but the board's looking for a different vibe." He chuckled, as if firing her was a punchline. "You get how this game works, right?" She didn't. Not like this. Not after pouring her soul into the Bennett proposal, a 200-page masterpiece that had taken 3 months of sleepless nights, endless data models, and a vision so precise it had sealed the deal before the ink dried. She'd stood in the war room at 2 a.m., perfecting every slide, every forecast, while Mark was probably at some rooftop bar, schmoozing clients with her work. And now, this. Her eyes flicked to the envelope. "Solid," she repeated, tasting the word like ash. "I built the Bennett strategy. That was my work." Mark's smile tightened, just for a second, before he waved a hand. "Team effort, Emily. You know how it goes. Don't make this harder than it needs to be." Harder? She wanted to scream, to flip the desk, to demand why her name had been scrubbed from the final proposal she'd found on his desk 2 weeks ago. She'd seen it, the PDF open on his monitor, her initials replaced with his, her contributions erased like she'd never existed. But she didn't scream. Not yet. Emily Carter had rebuilt her life from nothing once. Divorce, debt, a toddler in tow. And she'd learned to keep her cards close. Dignity was her armor, and she wouldn't let Mark see it crack. "Thank you for the opportunity," she said, standing, her voice cool as the Puget Sound wind outside. She smoothed her blazer, grabbed her purse, and walked out, her heels clicking on the polished floor. Mark's eyebrows lifted, surprised by her composure. He'd expected tears, maybe begging. He didn't know her at all. The HR rep, a nervous woman named Karen with a clipboard, escorted her through the open plan office. Heads turned, then quickly looked away. Colleagues she'd mentored, analysts she'd trained, all avoiding her gaze. The hum of keyboards and muted phone calls felt like a funeral march. Her cardboard box, packed with 5 years of her life, a framed photo of Lila, a coffee mug, a dog-eared planner, felt heavier than it should have. By the time she reached the elevator, her email was disabled. Her key card dead. The doors closed with a soft ding, sealing her out of the world she'd built. In the parking garage, Emily slid into her 2015 Subaru Outback, the one with a dented fender and a fading Seahawks sticker. She gripped the steering wheel until her knuckles whitened, her breath shallow. Seattle's skyline loomed beyond the concrete pillars, all tech towers and overpriced condos, a city that chewed up dreamers and spat them out. She didn't cry, not yet. Instead, she replayed Mark's words. "You get how this game works." While she was starting to... Her phone buzzed. A text from Lila, 14, probably sprawled on the couch in their Capitol Hill apartment, scrolling TikTok. "Mom, you home soon? Need snacks." Emily's heart twisted. Lila didn't know yet. How do you tell your daughter you've been betrayed, that the rent, the tuition, the braces she needed were all in limbo? Emily typed back, "Soon, kiddo. Love you." Then she sat there, the sleet streaking her windshield, and let the truth sink in. She'd been played, used, erased. But Emily wasn't done. Not by a long shot. Back in her apartment, the radiator hissed, fighting a losing battle against the damp Seattle chill. Lila was asleep on the couch, a half-eaten bag of goldfish crackers spilling onto the cushions. Emily tucked a blanket over her, brushing a strand of dark hair from her daughter's face. At 14, Lila was all sharp wit and quiet resilience. A kid who'd grown up too fast after the divorce. Emily couldn't fail her. Not again. She opened her laptop, the screen casting a blue glow over the cluttered kitchen table. Bills, a library book, Lila's algebra homework. Logging into her personal cloud drive, she pulled up the Bennett proposal. Every version, every edit, every timestamp. There it was, her original concept, dated November 12th, 2024, with her name in bold. Emily Carter, Senior Strategist. She'd saved it all, not out of paranoia, but habit, a holdover from her early days when she'd learned the hard way that nothing in corporate America was guaranteed. Her eyes lingered on the final version, the one Mark had presented. Her name was gone, replaced with his. The audacity of it burned. She'd spent 3 months aligning that strategy to Bennett Enterprises' AI-driven supply chain, crunching numbers until her vision blurred, crafting a pitch that had made Sophie Bennett. The CEO nodded in approval during the final meeting. Sophie. Emily's mind snagged on the name. Think 6 years ago, they'd worked together when Sophie was still running a scrappy startup in Redmond. Back then, Sophie had been all grit and big ideas, and Emily had built the growth model that secured her first major funding round. "If you ever need a real shot, call me," Sophie had said over beers at a dive bar in Fremont. "The builders deserve more than the suits who sell them." Emily hadn't called. Not once. Pride, maybe, or the grind of single motherhood. But now, staring at her inbox, Sophie's name glowed like a lifeline. Her fingers hovered over the keyboard. What was there to lose? Mark had already taken everything. Or so he thought. Subject: the truth about your proposal, Sophie. Dear Sophie, I hope this finds you well. You may not remember me, but we collaborated during your Series A round in 2019. I'm writing because I recently left Reynolds and Stone, and there's something you need to know about the Bennett Enterprises proposal. It was my work. Every slide, every model, every word, my name was removed before it reached you. I have proof. If you're open to a conversation, I'd value the chance to share more. Best, Emily Carter. She hit send, her pulse spiking. Would Sophie even read it? She was a tech titan now, running a $2 billion zero-cents empire, not the scrappy founder Emily had known. The Sophie of 2025 might not care about a disgraced strategist sob story, but Emily had to try. She closed her laptop and leaned back, the radiator's clank echoing her unease. Something told her this email would either save her or bury her deeper. At 6:47 a.m., her phone buzzed, rattling against a coffee mug. Emily, bleary-eyed, grabbed it, expecting a school reminder or a bill notice. Instead, it was an email from Sophie Bennett. Emily, of course I remember you. That growth model you built saved my ass in 2019. I'm livid about what you've shared. I've reviewed your attachments and I have questions. Can we talk today? My assistant will set it up. Sophie. Emily's coffee nearly spilled as she bolted upright. Livid. That word pulsed with possibility. Sophie hadn't just responded. She was angry. By noon, Emily was on a call, her earbuds in, pacing the apartment while Lila was at school. Sophie's voice came through, sharp and commanding, the kind of tone that silenced boardrooms. "Emily, let's cut the bullshit," Sophie said. "I knew that proposal had your fingerprints. The phrasing, the risk models. It screamed you. Why the hell wasn't your name on it?" Emily exhaled, steadying herself. Mark Reynolds. He scrubbed me from the final version, presented it as his own. Then he fired me last week, called it restructuring. A long pause. Emily could almost hear Sophie's gears turning. He fired you? After you landed my contract? Sophie's laugh was bitter. That's not just stupid. It's theft. I have every draft, Emily said. Timestamps, notes, emails. It's all mine. I believe you, Sophie said. And I don't do business with liars. Effective immediately, Reynolds and Stone's contract is terminated. Emily's breath caught. You're sure? Done, Sophie said, her tone final. But I'm not letting your work go to waste. I'm launching a new venture, consulting, high-stakes strategy. I want you as CEO. You in? CEO. The word hit like a shockwave. Emily sank onto a chair, her mind spinning. Her leading a firm? With Sophie Bennett's backing? It was a dream, but dreams came with risks. Lila's school, their rent, the Brace's payment plan. She couldn't afford to fail. I need to think about it, she said, her voice barely steady. Think. Don't take too long, Sophie said. You're not a footnote, Emily. You're the whole damn story. The call ended, and Emily stared at the Space Needle through her window, its silhouette faint against the gray sky. Seattle was a city of reinvention, from Amazon's rise to Boeing's legacy. But it was also a pressure cooker where one wrong move could cost everything. She thought of Lila, of the nights she'd missed tucking her in, of Mark's voice. You're not leadership material. He was wrong. She felt it in her bones. That night, Emily sat Lila down on their thrift store couch, the one with a stubborn juice stain from years ago. Lila, in her oversized Nirvana hoodie, looked up, sensing something big. Mom, what's wrong? You're like intense. Emily took a breath. I got fired, kiddo. Last week. They took my work, lied about it, and let me go. Samina's eyes widened. What? You work harder than anyone. How could they? It's okay, Emily said, touching her arm. Something better's coming. A new job, maybe. A big one. Lila studied her, her teenage skepticism softening. Are you scared? Terrified, Emily admitted. But I'm ready. Leela nodded, leaning into her. You're gonna crush it, Mom. The next morning, Emily called Sophie. Good, Sophie said. Welcome to Bennett Carter Consulting. Your CEO. Paperwork's already moving. By noon, the news broke on GeekWire. Bennett Enterprises terminates $15.00 M contract with Reynolds and Stone amid leadership concerns. The firm's stock slid 5% by 3 p.m., a brutal hit in Seattle's cutthroat market. Emily imagined Mark's face, his smug grin replaced with panic. She wasn't wrong. 2 days later, her phone rang. Mark Reynolds. Emily's stomach twisted, but she answered, her voice ice cold. Mark. Emily, he said. His tone strained, like he was forcing charm. Look, there's been a misunderstanding. Sophie's blowing this out of proportion. Let's fix this before it gets messy. Hey, fix it, she said, her voice sharp. You stole my work, erased my name, and fired me. What's there to fix? A pause, then his voice darkened. Don't push me, Emily. You think you can tank my firm and walk away? I'll make sure you never work in this city again. Her blood ran cold, but she didn't flinch. You made a mistake, Mark, not me. You're not leadership material, he snapped. You're a glorified analyst playing dress up. Back off or you'll regret it. She hung up, her hands shaking. Not with fear, but rage. Mark's threat lingered like a storm cloud. Seattle was a small world for consultants. A whisper from him could poison her network. But she wasn't backing down. At Bennett Carter Consulting's temporary office, a leased space in Pioneer Square with exposed brick and creaky floors, Emily met Sophie to strategize. The city buzzed outside, ferries gliding across Elliott Bay, tech bros in Patagonia vests clogging the sidewalks. Sophie slid a coffee across the table, her eyes gleaming. Mark's desperate. He called me, begging to keep the contract. I told him to talk to my CEO. Emily smirked. He did. Didn't go well. Sophie laughed. You're shaking things up already, but we need to move fast. I want Bennett Carter to be the anti-Reynolds and Stone. Ethical, transparent, built by people who actually do the work. I'm ready, Emily said, though her mind flickered to Mark's threat. You'll regret it. She pushed it aside, focusing on the future. That afternoon, her phone lit up with messages. Sarah, a former colleague, texted, Emily, we know Mark stole your work. I saw him change the proposal credits. If you need me to speak up, I'm in. Then Nathan, an analyst, Mark's been doing this for years. You're not the only one. By evening, a dozen ex-colleagues had reached out, their stories mirroring hers, credit stolen, promotions blocked, voices silenced. Emily's inbox became a vault of evidence. Emails, project logs, performance reviews. She hadn't just been fired, she'd been targeted. But something nagged at her. Why had Mark altered her reviews? She'd been rated exceeds expectations for years, yet her final file, buried in HR's system, said meets expectations. Sarah's message confirmed it. They changed your eval 3 months ago. It was deliberate. Why? What had she done to become a high-risk employee? The question gnawed at her, a mystery that felt bigger than one firing. By Friday, Reynolds and Stone's spin machine kicked in. A LinkedIn post from their PR team claimed Emily had chosen to pursue other opportunities due to performance challenges. The lie spread fast, whispered in Seattle's tight-knit tech circles. Emily's contacts went quiet, some unfollowing her on social media. Mark's threat wasn't empty. He was poisoning her name. But the board was rattled. An anonymous tip, likely from a fed-up colleague, triggered an internal probe into leadership conduct. GeekWire ran a follow-up. Reynolds and Stoneface's board inquiry after contract loss, alleged misconduct. Emily read it at 2 a.m., her laptop glowing in the dark. The article didn't name her, but it didn't have to. She was the spark. She closed her laptop, staring at the city lights beyond her window. Seattle was a paradox. Innovative, progressive, yet ruthless to those who challenged the status quo. Mark had underestimated her, but so had she. The woman who'd walked out of Reynolds and Stone with a cardboard box wasn't just a strategist. She was a fighter. And this fight was just beginning. Somewhere in the city, Mark was plotting his next move. Emily knew he wouldn't go quietly. But neither would she. The truth was her weapon, and she had a vault full of it. The question was, who would break first? The Seattle skyline glittered like a promise through the floor-to-ceiling windows of Bennett Carter Consulting's new office in Pioneer Square. But Emily Carter felt the weight of a gathering storm. It was late March 2025, and the city's tech scene was buzzing, not with innovation, but with the fallout of her war against Reynolds and Stone. GeekWire's headline still burned in her mind. Reynolds and Stone faces executive crisis after $15.00 M contract loss. Her firing had been the spark, but the flames were spreading, and Emily knew Mark Reynolds wasn't the kind to let his empire crumble without a fight. She sat at a reclaimed wood desk, her laptop open to a draft pitch for a new client, but her focus kept slipping. Her phone buzzed relentlessly. Journalists, former colleagues, strangers inspired by her story. Yet beneath the support lurked a darker current. Mark's threat from weeks ago echoed, "You'll regret it." She'd dismissed it then, fueled by adrenaline and Sophie Bennett's backing, but now, with Bennett Carter Consulting gaining traction, the stakes felt higher. Even Seattle was a small pond for big fish, and Mark had allies with long memories. Sophie burst into the office, her auburn hair pulled into a messy bun, a Starbucks cup in one hand and a tablet in the other. You see this? She said, tossing the tablet onto Emily's desk. A TechCrunch article screamed, "From fired to founder, how Emily Carter exposed a consulting giant's dirty secrets." The piece detailed her role in the Bennett contract, Mark's betrayal, and the board's scrambling probe. It was glowing, almost mythic, but Emily's stomach twisted. "They're calling me a disruptor," she said, her voice tight. "But this feels like a target on my back." Tui grinned, undaunted. "Good, let them aim. We're building something real, ethical, transparent. The opposite of Reynolds and Stone's snake pit. You're CEO now, Emily. Own it." Emily nodded, but her eyes flicked to the article's comments. Amid the praise were venomous jabs. "Bitter ex-employee. Career suicide. She'll crash and burn." She recognized the tone. Mark's allies planting seeds of doubt. The tech world loved a hero until it didn't, and Seattle's rumor mill was brutal. She closed the laptop, forcing herself to focus. Bennett Carter had just landed 3 major clients, including a direct competitor of Reynolds and Stone, a coup that had sent shockwaves through the industry. But success came with enemies, and Emily wasn't naive enough to think Mark would stay quiet. That afternoon, a courier delivered a bombshell. Emily was in a strategy session with Sophie, sketching out a pitch for a Bellevue-based AI startup, when the receptionist buzzed. "Legal documents for you, Ms. Carter." Emily's heart sank as she opened the envelope. A cease and desist order from Reynolds and Stone, accusing her of stealing proprietary data to launch Bennett Carter and poach their clients. The language was vicious, claiming she had violated confidentiality agreements and caused irreparable harm. The penalty? A $5 million 0 cents lawsuit if she didn't comply. Sophie snorted, tossing the papers aside. This is Mark throwing a tantrum. He's got nothing. But Emily wasn't so sure. Her hands trembled as she reread the document. Seattle's legal scene was a minefield, and Reynolds and Stone's law firm, Kessler and Vance, was a heavyweight known for crushing smaller players. If they dragged her into court, the legal fees alone could bankrupt her, not to mention the damage to Bennett Carter's fledgling reputation. Lila's tuition, their Capitol Hill apartment, the Brace's payment plan, everything hung in the balance. She called Rachel Lee, her lawyer, a sharp-tongued former prosecutor who'd taken Emily's case pro bono after reading the GeekWire story. Rachel's voice crackled through the speakerphone, calm but lethal. "This is a scare tactic, Emily. They're betting you'll panic and fold. We're not playing their game." "What's our move?" Emily asked, pacing the office. Outside, a ferry horn blared across Elliott Bay, a reminder of the city's relentless pulse. "We hit back harder," Rachel said. "I'm filing a countersuit tomorrow. Defamation, wrongful termination, and professional misrepresentation. We've got your drafts, timestamps, emails. Plus, I've got statements from 3 former colleagues confirming Mark tampered with your performance reviews. They're ready to testify." Emily's breath caught. "Who?" "Sarah Nguyen, Nathan Patel, and Alicia Torres. They say Mark changed your exceeds expectations to meets expectations 3 months before your firing. It was deliberate, Emily. They were setting you up." The revelation hit like a punch. She'd suspected as much, but hearing it confirmed, knowing Mark had orchestrated her erasure with such precision, ignited a fury she hadn't felt before. "Why me?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. "What did I do to become a threat?" Rachel paused, then said, "That's what we need to find out. Something's off. Mark's not just covering his tracks, he's hiding something bigger." The call ended, leaving Emily staring at the cease and desist. A mystery gnawed at her. Why had Mark targeted her so meticulously? Was it just the Bennett contract? Or had she stumbled onto something he couldn't afford to let surface? The question lingered like a shadow, pulling her deeper into a game she hadn't chosen. By the next morning, Rachel's countersuit was filed, and the tech blogs exploded. GeekWire ran a follow-up. Reynolds and Stone slapped with countersuit as former strategist alleges defamation. The cease and desist vanished within 48 hours, withdrawn without explanation. A silent admission of weakness. Emily should have felt triumphant, but the victory was hollow. Mark's silence was too clean, too calculated. He wasn't retreating, he was regrouping. Meanwhile, Bennett Carter Consulting was soaring. The firm's ethical stance, transparency, merit based credit, no corporate sleaze resonated in Seattle's progressive tech scene. They'd secured contracts with a Tacoma logistics firm, a Spokane healthcare startup, and most gallingly for Mark, a Bellevue AI giant that had been Reynolds and Stone's flagship client. The news sent ripples through the industry, with Twitter threads buzzing, Bennett Carter is the future. Reynolds Stone is done. Emily's inbox overflowed with LinkedIn requests from recruiters, analysts, even former Reynolds and Stone staff wanting to jump ship. But the praise came with a cost. Late that night, Emily's phone pinged with an anonymous email forwarded through a burner account. You're not as untouchable as you think. Watch your back. No signature, no context, just a chill that settled into her bones. She forwarded it to Rachel, who dismissed it as cowardly noise, but Emily couldn't shake the unease. Seattle's tech world was a labyrinth of alliances, and Mark's network ran deep. Venture capitalists, board members, even local politicians who owed him favors. If he wanted her silenced, he wouldn't need a lawsuit. A whisper in the right ear could do it. The next blow came subtly, disguised as industry chatter. A LinkedIn post from a Reynolds and Stone VP, carefully worded, implied Emily had been difficult to manage and had left voluntarily after underperforming. The lie spread like wildfire, amplified by Mark's allies in private Slack channels and tech meetups at Belltown bars. By Friday, Emily noticed her network cooling, former mentors stopped replying, clients delayed meetings. And then came the rumors. Emily Carter's unstable. She's burning bridges. No one trusts a whistleblower. The attacks were personal, vicious, designed to paint her as unhinged. At a coffee shop in Fremont, she overheard two consultants whispering her name, their words slicing through the hum of espresso machines. She's done. No one hires a troublemaker. Emily's hands shook as she stirred her latte, but she refused to crumble. She opened her laptop and pulled up her evidence vault. Every email, every draft, every performance log. Sarah's statement about the tampered reviews was there, alongside Nathan's timeline of Mark's credit stealing. Alicia, a former HR rep, had sent a bombshell. Mark pushed to downgrade your eval to justify the firing. He called you a liability in a closed-door meeting. A liability. The word stung, but it also sparked a question. What had she seen or known that made her dangerous? Her phone buzzed, pulling her from her thoughts. A message from an unknown number. Check your mail. You're not alone. No name. No context. Emily's pulse quickened. Was this a trap or a lifeline? She drove home, the Seattle drizzle blurring her windshield, and found an unmarked envelope in her mailbox. Inside was a single page, printed from an internal Reynolds and Stone memo, dated October 2024. It outlined a restructure plan to neutralize high-risk staff before an IPO pitch. Her name was circled in red ink, with a handwritten note. They're hiding more. Dig deeper. Who had sent this? The memo's leak was a bombshell exposing Mark's schemes to the bone. Emily forwarded it to Rachel, her mind racing. Mystery number 3, who was the leaker and what did they know? The note's warning, they're hiding more, suggested a conspiracy beyond her firing, something that could unravel Reynolds and Stone entirely. But digging deeper meant risking more than her career. Mark's allies were circling, and their whispers were turning into threat. The turning point came unexpectedly, in a quiet cafe in Lincoln Park. Emily was sipping an overpriced cappuccino, scrolling through her evidence, when her phone lit up with a LinkedIn message from Nora Hayes, a retired co-founder of Reynolds and Stone. Nora had stepped down years before Emily's promotion, her name a legend in Seattle's consulting world. The message was brief. Emily, I've followed your story. I believe you. Can we meet? Emily hesitated. Nora was a wild card. Retired, reclusive, with no clear motive? Was this a setup or a breakthrough? Curiosity won. They met the next morning, the cafe's windows fogged from the spring chill. Nora, in her late 60s, carried herself with quiet authority, her silver hair pulled into a low bun. She slid a flash drive across the table, her eyes steady. I left before Mark took full control, Nora said, her voice low. I saw the firm changing, less about strategy, more about power. I suspected he was manipulating staff, but I didn't have proof. Until now. Emily's fingers closed around the drive. What's on it? Memos, transcripts, board communications from my last 6 months, Nora said. They show Mark rigging performance reviews, using layoffs as PR distractions, targeting anyone who asked too many questions. You were one of them. Emily's heart thudded. Why me? Nora leaned forward, her gaze piercing. You were too good, Emily. Your work on the Bennett contract wasn't just a win, it was a spotlight on Mark's incompetence. He couldn't let you shine brighter than him. The words landed like a revelation. Emily plugged the drive into her laptop, her hands trembling. The files were a gold mine, a memo detailing strategic terminations to streamline leadership before an IPO, a transcript of Mark bragging about controlling the narrative by firing problem employees, a board email warning of exposure risks if key staff spoke out. Her name appeared repeatedly, flagged as high risk for her inquisitive nature. It was just theft, it was a purge. Why now? Emily asked, her voice barely steady. Why help me? Nora's eyes softened, but her voice was steel. Because I was complicit once, and I won't be again. You're not just fighting for yourself, Emily. You're exposing a system that's broken too many. The truth deserves more advocates than excuses. Emily left the cafe, the flash drive burning a hole in her pocket. Nora's evidence was a weapon, but wielding it meant escalating a war she might not win. Mystery number 4. Was this enough to topple Mark's empire, or would it provoke a backlash she couldn't survive? Emily sent the files to Rachel, who responded in minutes. This is dynamite, we go public now. By Monday, the Wall Street Times published an expose that shook Seattle's tech world to its core. Consulting giant accused of systemic retaliation, fraud. The article, backed by Nora's documents and Emily's evidence, detailed Mark's manipulations, the targeted reviews, the targeted layoffs. It named names, quoted colleagues, and included a leaked email from Mark to the board. Carter's a liability. Neutralize her before she talks. The story went viral, trending on Twitter with hashtags like Justice for Emily and End Corporate Lies. Emily's phone buzzed nonstop. Journalists from Bloomberg, supporters on LinkedIn, strangers sharing their own stories of corporate erasure. Women in tech flooded her inbox. This happened to me. Your story gave me courage. The solidarity was overwhelming, but so was the spotlight. Emily wasn't just a strategist anymore. She was a symbol, and symbols drew fire. The backlash was swift. Mark's lawyer, a shark named Gregory Holt, hinted at retaliatory lawsuits claiming Emily had orchestrated a smear campaign to extort Reynolds and Stone. The threat loomed like a guillotine. Holt's firm had a reputation for dragging cases out until opponents went broke. Emily's savings, already stretched thin, wouldn't survive a legal marathon. Lila's future flashed before her. No college fund, no stability. She pushed the fear down, but it lingered, a constant hum of dread. Mark's allies doubled down, spreading rumors through Seattle's tech haunts. At a South Lake Union networking event, Emily's name was poison. She's unhinged. She faked the evidence. No one trusts her. A former mentor, someone she'd once admired, emailed her. You're making enemies you can't afford, Emily. Think about your daughter. The mention of Lila sent a chill through her. This wasn't just business anymore, it was personal. The tide turned with a whistleblower. Alicia Torres, the former HR rep, went public in a Medium post that rocked the industry. I saw Reynolds and Stone silence dissent. Emily Carter was their target. Alicia confirmed the review tampering, the liability meetings, the culture of fear. Her post, shared thousands of times, triggered a domino effect. Two Reynolds and Stone executives resigned within hours, citing personal reasons, but insiders whispered they'd been forced out by a panicking board. The firm's stock slid another 3%, and clients began pulling contracts, spooked by the scandal. Emily was in her office, reviewing a new client pitch when Rachel called. "You're not going to believe this," she said, her voice electric. "Mark's out. Ousted as CEO. His LinkedIn's gone. Poof, like he never existed. The board's in damage control and the SEC's sniffing around for fraud. This is federal, Emily. You did this." Emily sank into her chair, her breath shallow. The pivotal moment had arrived. Mark, the untouchable king, dethroned. Her expose, Nora's evidence, Alicia's courage, it had worked. A federal investigation was no small thing. Reynolds and Stone's IPO dreams were dead, and Mark's career was ash. She should have felt elated, but the victory was bittersweet. The cost had been high. Sleepless nights, whispered threats, the fear that Lila would pay the price, and Holt's lawsuit threat still hung over her, a storm cloud refusing to dissipate. Bennett Carter Consulting, meanwhile, was thriving. The firm onboarded 4 new clients, including a Portland renewable energy startup and a Vancouver, BC fintech giant. Emily's vision, ethical consulting, built by the people who did the work, was resonating. Her team, a mix of ex-Reynolds staff and Sophie's network, buzzed with purpose, their Pioneer Square office alive with ideas. But Emily couldn't shake the sense that the fight wasn't over. Mystery number 5, would the board admit full accountability, or would they scapegoat Mark to save themselves? The answer came in a settlement. By mid-April, Reynolds and Stone's lawyers reached out, offering a deal. A confidential financial resolution, a public apology, and sweeping reforms. An ethics board, transparency reports, employee protections. The apology, posted on their website, was a masterclass in corporate humility. "We failed our team and our values. We're committed to change." Emily's name wasn't mentioned, but it didn't need to be. The industry knew. Rachel pushed for more. "Reject the non-disclosure clause," she said. "They want your silence. Don't give it to them." Emily agreed. "I'm done being quiet." She signed the settlement, minus the NDA, ensuring her story, and the truth, couldn't be buried. The financial payout, though undisclosed, was enough to secure Lila's future and fund Bennett Carter's growth. But the real win was the precedent. A system that had thrived on silencing builders like her was cracking. The emotional crescendo came at a women's leadership summit in Portland, where Emily was invited to speak. The auditorium, packed with 500 professionals, buzzed with anticipation. She took the stage, her navy blazer crisp, her voice steady but raw. "I was told I wasn't leadership material," she said, her eyes scanning the crowd. "I was told to be grateful for scraps. But leadership isn't about power, it's about truth. And the truth is, the people who build, who create, who ask questions, they're the ones who change the world." The room erupted, a standing ovation that shook the rafters. Emily's throat tightened, not from nerves, but from the weight of what she'd done. She wasn't just speaking for herself. She was speaking for every woman who'd been erased, every colleague who'd been silenced. Backstage, Sophie hugged her, whispering, "You're rewriting the rules, Emily. Don't stop." That night, Emily and Lila sat on their apartment balcony, the Space Needle glowing in the distance. The spring air was warm, carrying the salt of Puget Sound. Lila, in her Nirvana hoodie, scrolled through her phone, then looked up. "Mom, you're trending again. They're calling you a hero." Emily laughed, her eyes stinging. "I'm just me, kiddo." "No," Lila said, leaning into her. "You're the boss. You didn't let them win." Emily kissed her forehead, her heart full. Lila's pride, her belief, was worth more than any contract. Bennett Carter Consulting was now a beacon, its client list growing, its reputation unassailable. Emily's story had reshaped Seattle's tech scene, proving that truth could dismantle even the most entrenched systems. But the real triumph was personal. She'd shown Lila and herself that courage wasn't just surviving, it was building something better. As the city lights flickered below, Emily felt a quiet certainty. Mark was gone, his empire fractured. But the fight for fairness, for recognition, was far from over. She'd sparked a reckoning, and the ripples were just beginning. Somewhere in Seattle, another builder was watching, ready to stand up. And Emily would be there, not as a hero, but as proof that the house only wins until the builders walk away.